Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to do an update to a video I covered about a week ago, which is titled, 50 years ago, I woke up to find someone other than my girl under the covers. Crazy is timeless. And guys, that story is a recap. It's about the guy, he's 72 years old, and wrote in about a situation that happened 50 years ago, where one night, or one middle of the night, after having an unbelievably tough day at work and all that, he woke up to find somebody under his covers with him. And it wasn't his girlfriend. It turned out to be his younger nutcase sister. And obviously, as you all recall, he kicked her out of the bed and all that, and he said how fast forward 50 years, she's gone through 5 different marriages and all that. Yeah, he's had nothing to do with her ever since, that type of thing. Completely nuts. And I use that story as an example how crazy is timeless. What I talk about here in this channel, it's just as effective as it was decades ago, as it will be in decades to come. Around the world, you get the point. Now, he's responding here with an update to answer a lot of questions, guys, in the comment section about him, his life, his nutcase sister, information about her, all that. So he took the time to write this, so I thought I would update this, because a lot of you guys watched this and most certainly commented on the story. So to jump right into it, he says, hey SSM, thank you for using my story, and thank you for your respectful comments. I know it sounds far-fetched and hard to believe. It is one of those deep, dark secrets I've carried with me for all these years. I have heard all sorts of crazy in my life, man. And I've seen a lot of crazy. That's why I didn't dismiss it as being, BS. Sure, there are things in here, it's like, you got to be kidding me. But you know what? Crazier things have happened. I have only told one other person in my life about that, and that was my best friend. He died 10 years ago from brain cancer. My wife and I will celebrate 48 years of marriage together on November 1st, and I will do everything I can to ensure she will never know about it. Well, to make sure she doesn't subscribe to my channel. Well, November 1st is 2 days from now. I'm filming this on Monday. Considering that, I read all the comments and was tempted to comment there, but chose to answer here to preserve anonymity. First of all, the comments about no one could afford to do that today, that depends on 3 things. Number 1, where do you live? If you choose to live in an area where the cost of living is high, the likelihood of being able to live on your own is lessened. I grew up in a rural area where costs were low, as were wages. But work ethic and reputation were prized. Those places still exist. I live in one right now. Many young people still live on their own and work their way through school without debt. My grandson rents an apartment from us and is working his way through college without 1 red cent of debt. It can be done. Yes, exactly. Yeah, of course. If you want to live in the city, of course, a lot of young people want to live in the city, or at least they did before all hell started breaking loose in some of these American cities. But it was much more expensive to live. End of story. But if you go to, for instance, a community college or something that's more in rural areas or suburbs, yeah, you can do it. You may have to juggle, get a couple roommates or something, but it can be done. People are reflecting on the cost of living issues nowadays. But I will also say this, 50 years ago, you got much more bang for your buck. And we can go into a whole debate on that subject. And I could take up a whole video. Hint, hint, it's about the false reporting of the Consumer Price Index from the government, which companies base their salary increases on, amongst many other things that have a major impact on things as decades have come and gone. But and that false report, because we all know it's bullshit, has been a very negative issue. But this is not the economics channel. We can discuss this another time if you all want to. But anyhow, it can be done. So number 2, where and how you work. The obvious thing is to make enough money to survive. If you choose to take an easy job with very little manual labor, low skill, or few hours, you will fail to support yourself. I started work at $2.21 per hour. There was no OSHA guaranteeing a safe workplace. Union dues took 2 hours' wages each month, and tax rates were higher than they are today. A steel mill is very labor intensive. You have to learn numerous skills just to keep yourself safe and strong enough to make it through a day. But if you're not willing to learn these skills and put in the sweat equity, you'll be relegated to grunt work or terminated. I see tons of good paying factory and trade jobs advertised constantly. Seldom does anyone younger than 30 apply for there. Why? I mean, what's wrong with pushing a broom for $20 an hour and taking advantage of an opportunity to build a career? Well, it's a different ballgame nowadays. And notice he said this is in the, in the early 70s, $2.21 an hour. But then again, cost of living, night and day, obviously, back in the early 70s as compared to today. And also he said he was in a more rural area. Number 3, where would you go to school? Or where you go to school? It says, granted, colleges and universities have become bloated institutions of less value. You're darn right about that, sir. More cost. However, community colleges, trade schools, and private company training are still available and affordable. If you choose to go to a prestigious university that has a staff with more administrators than instructors, you not only can't afford it, but you're getting screwed on the amount of knowledge you'll gain. What knowledge they do impart on you will likely be useless to life skills or job skills. Yeah, colleges and universities today, particularly the prestigious ones, and I'm saying that I'm being sarcastic there, they're indoctrination centers. What the hell are people getting out of there in terms of real life skills? But one of the smartest things you can do nowadays, guys, if you're going to college, is A, major in something that actually there's a demand for when you get out of there, get a bang for your buck what you're putting into it, and go to community college for a couple of years, and you transfer that if the credits can transfer, save a fortune. I got 2 nephews that did the same thing. They saved a fortune. They lived with their dad. Their mom and dad are divorced. They lived with their dad because he lived right near one of the community colleges. And then they transferred to a good 4-year school and saved a fortune on room and board as well as tuition. You know, it can be done. But a lot of people have the big egos, kids and their parents, and they want to do the full ride and spend all that money at these crappy universities. I mean, well, they're considered not crappy, but the education is crappy. It doesn't serve them anything, but they just don't think about tomorrow. Or somebody else's money, so they don't give a shit. He says, I live in a flyover country where modest living, hard work, and experience and learning life skills are the culture. Okay, so you're in the middle of the country here. Several commenters mentioned that I got some worthless, easy degree, or that school's too hard today. And I have to say, I don't see it that way. Number 1, my degree was a Bachelor's of Science in Business with dual minors in Marketing and Management. That's not a bad thing to major in. I ended up with a 3.6 out of 4.0, along with numerous specialty certifications that I earned throughout my career. It served me well. From that start in the steel mill, I worked my way up to 22 and a half years at the same company. I was a middle-level corporate manager over 7 manufacturing plants when I left. My particular specialty was in great demand. It allowed me to go to a floundering legacy manufacturer that was needing immediate change. I spent 11 years there restructuring their management and modernizing their process. Then I retired for the first time. Another company came calling a year later, and I began a management consulting career. That lasted for another 10 years. Then I retired for good. I'm not what you call wealthy, but I raised a family, invested wisely, and can now live with and travel comfortably. Well, there you go. That's all you really need. Everybody has different ideas what wealth is. You know, we can go back and forth on that. Some people think you're not wealthy unless you have a private plane and a yacht and sail around the Mediterranean like Jeff Bezos. Or other people, wealthy is, hey, simply I can retire at a reasonable age and I don't have to worry about money and I can take care of some of my loved ones and that type of thing. So there's a whole debate on wealth. Number 2. For those that think school was easier back then, think about this. There was no Google. We used libraries filled with books. There was no internet. We had to attend every class in person. There was no personal computers or printers. All papers were handwritten. Formal papers were typed on typewriters without spell check, correction fluid, and not allowed. Grammar, spelling, and proper English language was graded as severely as the content. And lastly, there's a lot of math involved in attaining a business degree. Imagine achieving that without access to a spreadsheet program. And the handheld calculator wasn't commercially available when I started college. It says true, there are some degrees that require far more research and study than mine, but it wasn't a cream puff degree in an imaginary topic like gender studies either. I love the fact that you brought up gender studies. So as you guys can probably connect the dots, a lot of guys gave him shit in the comment section about stupid things like this, school being harder nowadays and blah blah. No. But here's the thing. Overwhelmingly, the guys that follow me here on this channel are cool, but no matter what, there are trolls that get in here and just live for any excuse to nitpick about anything and bitch about something. It is what it is. It's just like real life, you know. You could, out of 100 things, you can say 99 things right, but one thing you're off on. Everybody comes after you with that one little thing, right? And yeah, and there's also people, no matter what, they're going to think they have it way harder than the parents or the grandparents. It's like he right there listed all those things that he didn't have access to, and he made it work. So it's like. So, sir, don't worry about it. People are always going to find things to bitch about or whatever. It is what I get it every day. He says, about my little sister. Now we're getting to the good stuff. He says her first husband was a classmate of hers that she screwed and married during his leave before deployment. She moved with him to his off-base housing where she stayed while he served a tour duty in Vietnam. After he kicked her out, she came back home, and as I said, spent a month trading favors for booze and bed. She only had a backpack to her name, and when she chose to attempt to convince me to let her live in my apartment. Okay, so we're talking about the early 70s here. Obviously, Vietnam was still going on. I'm guessing she was one of those, maybe she was a hippie or flower child. I don't know what the hell it was, or definitely using drugs. A lot of them used them back then. I don't know, but I'm just picturing Forrest Gump and Jenny running around doing what Jenny did. Husband number 2. After I kicked her out, she attached herself to a local bartender. He was a drunken lout, so they got along just fine. They married a few months after her divorce was final. She was 7 months pregnant. A year later, a second child was born. They would continue to be married for another couple of years. She filed divorce papers while he was in jail for felony theft of alcohol and money from his bartending job. Husband number 3 was a nice guy. He was shy, withdrawn, and had a decent job. That lasted 2 years. He threw her out with her 2 kids when he discovered that his attempts to turn a drunken hoe into a housewife were unsuccessful. As I don't know many details, just what a coworker who was their neighbor told me. Number 4, he says she then began making rounds to the bars and clubs again and landed a job at a sports bar that served an upscale business crowd. There she met husband number 4. She moved in and brought her 2 kids with her. He says, I never met the first 3 husbands, but I did meet this one. It happened 16 years after I'd thrown her out of my apartment. You see, my father had a terminal sickness. He was in the hospital off and on for 2 years. During that time, she never once came to see him. No cards, no phone calls, nothing. Yeah, well, didn't he kick her out too? When he was admitted for what to be his last week of his life, my mother called her and told her what was going on. Toward the end of the week, she came into the hospital and demanded to see Dad. Her name wasn't on the visitors list, so hospital staff called me. I told them to keep her out until I got there. When I arrived, she was incensed that she, interesting word, that she not been permitted to go see the dad. She attempted to berate me in front of the hospital staff. I'd be like, fuck off. But I told her to shut up and pointed to the hospital chapel room and said, we'll take it in there. Inside, I regained my cool and introduced myself to the guy who was with her. He was embarrassed and apologized for her outburst. So I chose to address him as if she didn't exist. I told him they could see my dad, but that it would be only for 20 minutes. They must be quiet and not say anything to upset him. Yeah, good luck with that. What she did was far worse than anything I thought could happen. They entered the room with my mother. Sister walked up to Dad's bed, shook him awake, and announced, I'm glad I made it here in time. This is Robert. We're getting married this month. I'm pregnant. We plan on naming the baby after you. My father waved his hand and told her to leave. She did not take the hint. So mother called me into the room. I saw the distress my father was under and ran them out of the room. That was only the second time in my life I saw my father cry. He passed away the next morning. I'll forever think of that his life was short by my sister's selfish need to make his deathbed her wedding announcement. There are people in this world that are just the biggest selfish assholes ever. And it's best to do everything to avoid them as much as possible. But the worst thing is when they're in your family. They married his plan, and as soon as the baby was a toddler, he filed for divorce and ran off with her 2 older children. She was more than happy to leave without dealing with the youngest boy. Husband number 5. After being kicked out once again, little sister turned out my mother's house with her 2 kids. Mom took them in. Sister had no job, a few boxes of toys and clothes, and no money at all. My mother had some money from my father's savings and a small life insurance policy. Little sister thought she could just stay there with a live-in babysitter who could feed her and her kids. When I found out, I arranged to meet at my mom's house with social services workers in tow. He arranged housing, food stamps, and welfare so that she could be out within a week. Yeah, that's nice and all for your mom, but now the taxpayers are paying for her loser ass. Soon she resumed her barfly lifestyle. There was always some sucker who would buy her drinks and take her home or spend the night at her taxpayer-supplied apartment. Eventually, a pothead became infatuated with her and offered her a 5th wedding ring. Don't you mean a 6th? His only requirement was that she get rid of the kids, to which she complied by contacting her first husband and demanding that he come and get his brats. And that's what I know about the next 20 years. Until last month, when my older sister said that the little sister had been unhusbanded again. So, People are responsible for their own actions, but I gotta wonder, I forget how many siblings you have. And, obviously, a parent can do so much, but at the end of the day, a bad seed's a bad seed. I'm sure the parents are like, where did I go wrong, And, yeah, a kid is a reflection of their parents to a point, but then eventually the parents they've tried, and it's just a bad seed. So, she's a fucking lowlife. It says other comments. No, she never suffered childhood things happening to her. My father would have beat us to a pulp if us boys ever tried anything. No raunchy neighbors, uncles, or cousins ever got to her either. She got her freedom at 16 when Dad let her get a job and started driving. She fell in with a crowd of older teens at the drive-in burger joint where she worked. This is when she began drinking and hoeing around. Again, so this is like, the early 70s. How did she get in, as in his apartment? Is my apartment door locked with skeleton keys? When my coworker dropped me off at my apartment, he set the keys on the table. I never got up and locked it. That was common. There was very little crime in our town, especially so in my neighborhood. I lived in a less than a block from the city police station. But now knowing that she is on her own again, you can bet that my doors are locked at night when we are away. As I said, we've had 48 years of a successful marriage. We don't need her bringing toxic turmoil into our lives. And she will if you let her. Allowing her in would be akin to letting Charlie Brown's buddy, Pigpen, walk through the door. A cloud of dirt undoubtedly follow her in. Yeah, and STDs as well. So, there you go. That was quite the story, and I appreciate the update and everything like that. I knew you couldn't resist the comments because people were giving you shit about your education, school back then, and the cost of living and all those other things like that, Anyhow, and it's very interesting about your wacko sister. But again, I'm glad. It sounds like the only time you ever dealt with her was that one time at the hospital, but your poor dad. So anyhow, guys, that's the story there, and that's your story there. And once again, proving he can turn an HOE into a housewife, and once a 2-year-old is a cheater, as you see with his sister situation. And there are times in life, guys, when you have family, that the family could be the worst. More than anybody, because you're related to them, and you're bound to see them from time to time. And obviously there's that emotional bullshit that goes along, and a lot of people give family a chance when they really certainly should not, or should have stopped dealing with them years ago. But anyhow, very entertaining. I'm glad you're doing well, enjoying your retirement. I'm glad you have a marriage that worked out, because that's fucking rare nowadays. So it's good to hear from you. So, all right, guys, that was it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And guys, if you got a good story like to share, definitely email it to me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Just give me some time to get it, and I definitely will. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.